This week on 52 Weeks of Why, I have the privilege of interviewing someone that was introduced to me by a good friend. And it's really cool to hear her story and her passion for things. And I can't wait to hear her why. If you didn't know, I kind of forbid talking even candidly about the why before we actually get into the interview, because I want it to be fresh. I want it to be organic when we're in the midst of the podcast and when we're recording, to make sure it doesn't sound rehearsed. And I think you can tell that with some of the episodes we've had up to this point, where we're in some cases trying to find the why, and maybe in other cases stumbling over our words trying to get to a clear definition of the why. Before I introduce my guest, I have just a very quick, easy quote. This is one that I have spent years of my life working on, and it's been the foundation of my study in Stoicism and Marcus Aurelius and Seneca. And the quote is, "Emotions are like fire. They can either cook your food and heat your house, or burn the house down." And my study of emotions and controlling emotions, when I was younger, I had a really hard time. In fact, one of my promises to myself when I was 17 years old was that I never forget the intensity of the emotions that I felt, because I felt like every adult I knew just said, "Oh, you'll get over it," or "Oh, it's not as big of a deal as you think it is." And I always felt like, man, nobody understood how intense the feeling was, and it was always being denigrated or degraded. And so I don't know if maybe I'm alone in that or not. I think everybody kind of has this heightened state of emotions when we're younger. And as we get older, we learn to control them. And I think that control is a sign of maturity and growth, or at least in my personal experience, it's been that way. Without further ado, my guest today is China Darrington. China, first, let me thank you for taking time to be here today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So China was introduced to me by Carolyn Rittenauer, who's a previous guest on 52 Weeks of Why, and they have a unique relationship on how they met and on to friendship. And Carolyn was like, "Look, you absolutely have to talk to China." And after just a brief discussion prior to getting rolling, I can see why. China, give us a little history. You summed up a little bit, and I don't want to denigrate it by trying to summarize it. Tell us a little bit about your journey to being where you are. I want to summarize where you are now. So you work with Catholic Charities as a program administrator for their peer recovery coach program. And you're also working with the county in their opioid addiction as a project coordinator. So your current work deals heavily with those who are struggling with addiction and substance abuse, and helping those people come to a place where they can recover. But your journey to getting there is very interesting, and I'd love to hear it again.
Yeah, I just basically, when I was 16, started experimenting with drugs and didn't experience any huge consequences, just thought I was having a good time, and the only person I was hurting would be myself. Of course, my addiction progressed into the disease phase, and I started not to be able to make decisions for myself. The substances were. So I struggled for about 7 years with that until I was about 24. And then I got boxed in by some legal circumstances that came to fruition. And I thought, which is a common theme, let me go get some help, and touch up this little bit of a mess, and see if that will quell the courts. I didn't think that recovery was possible. I thought, even though I was only 24, that I had gone too far with that. And, it had taken over my life to such a degree that I didn't think I was ever going to be able to climb out of that. Did go to detox, did go to treatment, and did what they told me to do while I was in the court system. and found that recovery, kind of suited me. I liked it. Didn't like all the traditional things that have to go into a recovery, um, but I found benefit in many of the aspects, and I was getting some of the we call it recovery capital. So I was getting some of the protective factors in my life, family, connection, friends, education, all that stuff was there for me. So I started having a passion because it was really difficult to get the treatment that I needed and to figure out kind of those key components of how my recovery was going to balance to make my life work right. So I really wanted to start helping other people who were in similar circumstances and reduced resources be able to access and navigate a really, really complex system. Treatment is hard. If you go to Google and you type in need help for drugs, it is going to come up with hundreds, if not thousands, of addiction treatment finders, and they're just going to list places. And a lot of those places, if you give them a call, they'll say, yes, we have exactly what you're looking for. Then you get there, or you plunk down a chunk of change, and it's not what you're looking for at all, and it doesn't give you very much help. And every time you experience something like that, you lose hope. You think this is all just kind of hokey and nothing's going to work for me. I'm stuck like this. So I wanted to give people good navigation tools and support and advocacy through the process. And that's the most important thing that peer recovery coaches do, is we follow people through the systems as we help direct them where to go, what to say, how to access any funds needed to support that treatment effort, and be able to change their lives significantly.
Yeah, it's interesting to me to hear you talk about that journey, because when I picture that lifestyle and coming out of that lifestyle, you kind of, when you're there, you picture yourself coming out of it and having to deal with a regimen and a structure that is completely foreign to the life that you lived up to that point. And it's almost like you get there, and that's maybe the most scary part is, I'm stepping into something that's so foreign, and these people don't know me, and they don't know who I am, and they don't know how I operate, and they don't know my family or my past or my history, and how are they going to help me? So I think from personal experience, being rebellious when I was that age, you almost go into it with this level of cynicism and rebellion, like, I know I need help, I want help, but at the same time, I'm asking for it from people who I don't know have the ability to. And to your point, if you connect with the wrong people in that situation, it can continue to disenfranchise you. You can look at it and go, wait a minute, everywhere I go, they're just reinforcing that negative voice in my head that's telling me there's no way out, that it's not going to happen. So really cool that not only did you make it out and survived and came out and are able to articulate your story the way you do, but you, in the midst of going through it, I'd love to know more about this. While you were going through it, were you aware when you were in it that this is harder than it should be? Was that a thought that came up in your mind, or was it after you were done with going through everything that you came out and came to that realization?
There's oftentimes a lot of guilt and shame that go along with substance use disorder, because we've all grown up with the messaging, don't do drugs, drugs are bad, drugs will do bad things to you. So if you do them and you think you're having fun and you're like, this is a choice I'm making, it's a lifestyle. When you get to the point where you don't like it anymore and you want to change and you're having difficulty doing that, there's a lot of I'm not worthy enough to get help.
So it's less about, there is obviously regimen and structure required to make it happen, but it's less about that in the beginning than it is care, genuine care, genuine support. And to your point, that recovery coach having experience with exactly what they're going through. Either A, they did it themselves and here they are, or B, they have a family member or loved one who did it themselves and they can testify for the success. And it kind of goes back to that age-old statement of you're going to be fine, right? You're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how those words can have such a great impact. So going back to that period of time, coming out of that, how many years ago was that? And now how many years have you been in practicing what you're doing now?
Yeah, it's been 17 years on the 29th. So I'm not quite there yet, but in about 11 days, I'll celebrate 17 years continuous recovery.
Pretty awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Now, when you came out of this, I want to go right to your why, and then I have some questions about the why after we get to that. So I'd love for you to share with us now where you are today. What is your why?
What is my why? My why is because people deserve this. And substance abuse takes so much from a person. It takes their dignity, it takes their hope, takes their passions, takes their dreams. And to be able to give something back, and it begins and ends with hope. If I can't give anything, if I can't get any service for this person, this immediate moment, I can inspire them with hope of, I've been there. It seems impossible. It's not. Baby steps. Take this down to small digestible chunks of what you can do right now and just keep going. So my why is because people very often feel that they don't deserve help anymore. And I want to be there to be that guiding light and that point of navigation to help them, get them quality services, cut through the BS as quickly as possible, and to do it in a way that won't devastate them resource-wise.
I think you're the first person I've had and on the podcast and interviewed that is a purveyor of hope, right?
Yeah.
Someone who wants to just share hope. In other interviews, we've talked about this concept of the fork in the road, that people believe they're on a highway that is only going one direction and they can't see the sides, they can't see the exits, they only see the road that's in front of them, and they believe that that's the only road that they can travel until somebody comes along and shows them a fork in the road, shows them an exit or a side path that they can take. In your life, was this a result of someone else being a harbinger of hope for you, someone else who shared with you a fork in the road? And is that something that influenced you where you are now?
That would be two different people, and they were two very different tactics. My first one would be my very first treatment counselor. She was a little lady named Patty Sleevey. She worked in addictions treatment for about 30 years here in Summit County. And she was this beady-eyed little woman who could see into your soul. And, I was a cute little 24-year-old thing when I first was introduced to treatment. And I had just gone through 9 days of pretty harrowing detox. And I had to go to group for the first time. And I'm sitting in group and I'm falling asleep. And she's trying to get me awake, and she's not very nice about it. She has expectations of her group, and I'm not fulfilling that. And, I bat my eyelashes at her and I say, Miss Sleevey, I'd love to stay awake, but I've just been up all night. And what I want her to give me permission to take sleeping pills. And she said, when your body's tired enough, it'll sleep. And I've taken that with me because I've never been a terribly good sleeper until recently. And whenever I would get really, really overtired and I couldn't shut my brain down, I would hear, Patty Sleevey saying, when your body's tired enough, it'll sleep. Always has slept when it really needed it. And then I experienced a relapse in 2003 that was pretty awful for about 9 months. And when I entered treatment the next time, I went to a trauma-informed treatment center. And it was the first time I had ever experienced somebody who approached recovery from an empowerment standpoint. Instead of saying, you don't know anything, you need to sit down, you need to listen, I'm going to tell you what you need to do, which was a very outdated mode of treatment at that time. She said, you have strengths. You already know how to do this. I'm just here to guide you along the way. And she just encouraged and empowered and connected me. You know, she broke down barriers for me. And she was really the key player in me for the first time in my life saying, I deserve to get better. And I deserve to get better for a lot of reasons, not just my children, not just myself, not just I don't want to lose my jobs anymore. I don't want to lose my house anymore. You know, she brought me back from that brink with tenderness and care, not delicateness. She didn't baby me at all. She encouraged me to go through some pretty horrific explorations in order to get stable. But she said, I am always confident you have the strength to do this.
I love that one particularly. I love the person who can build power within you, who can find maybe a raindrop of wonderfulness inside of you and turn it into a waterfall, and help you. Not, they don't turn it into a waterfall. They help you take that drop and turn it into a waterfall, because this may be a personality flaw of mine, but whenever anybody comes at me like, you're going to do this,
Yes.
like your original fork in the
Yes.
road person, I've always done the opposite. Not always, until recently, I've always done the opposite, right?
Yes.
It just instilled in me the rebellious thing that I have thought in myself my whole life is to do the opposite when I'm ordered to do something. And the person who instead instills in you the logical reason why you have the ability to do it on your own, and that they are there to continue to support you as you work on that change yourself. Not breathe down your neck military style, not whoop you into submission, but rather maybe give you the extra arm that you need to carry you along forward. Boy, that's really powerful. I love that. I love that you had both ends of the spectrum, right? And maybe the 24-year-old you needed her to be firm like that.
I think I did. I think I needed that structure to break a lot of the habitual patterns. At that point, my brain had been taken over by these substances telling me, you don't have a problem. You don't have a problem. All these people are your problem. Get them out of your life and we'll be fine together. And so I really needed, when I was taking the 12-step abstinence-based approach, which was the old school method, and it seemed like it was one of the only alternatives at the time. So I did it. And it wasn't the best fit for me, but I was like, if I'm going to die otherwise, I'm going to try this. And it helps you change, they say in recovery, you got to change everything but your last name.
I assume if we go back to your 20s or your late teens, well, I'm not gonna put words in your mouth. You tell us what your why was back then.
Well, I was incredibly selfish and self-serving. I couldn't see beyond myself prior to my recovery. I was a narcissistic little adolescent, and again, you couldn't tell me anything. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it my way, and you're just going to get out of my way, or I'm going to sneak around and do it anyways. So I had a huge change of heart. I'm to the point, I can't not help people at this point. Like, I struggle all the time with the business end of this as an administrator. And, I've got to make it a viable business as well. And, what brings in the revenue and what provides help, actual tangible help in the moment, are very often two different things. So I have to get real creative on where am I going to get funding for this stuff I can't bill.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So coming out of that, on your path to recovery, was it right then, like a light bulb went off that I'm right now, I know that I'm going to come out of this and I'm going to share hope with other people? Was it instantaneous, or was it something that took a gradual amount of time after recovery to arrive at where you are now?
I always like to give a recovery coach about 2 to 5 years to find their own personal stability. So that's the process of going from the caterpillar to the butterfly. And you're just learning how to use those new wings. Uh, I don't want them to go into coaching too fast, because what happens is we all want to help people and we help too much and we lose our own foundation. So it's really important to kind of season yourself as a helper before going into the helping profession. So you can do this in a voluntary capacity before you do it as a profession. Um, there's many opportunities to do that in recovery. We're a very big mutual aid support system. So we're constantly there for each other, because very often we've burned our bridges with our families. We don't have very strong family connections with biological relatives. So we form family of choice. And you end up building your tribe from that. And but I would say, since I've been in recovery, I had this kind of, and it started a little bit out of anger about how hard it was to access the services. How every time I'd go into an appointment, they'd say, yeah, we can get you in to see you. They'd want to do these long, arduous, re-traumatizing clinical assessments, and every single agency wants to do one themselves. When I know now all you need is one assessment in the past 12 months by some agency, and then you can get the records released and use that. So there's just certain things that you can cut down the cumbersome part and get to the helping part quicker.
Yeah, it's interesting, as you there's other individuals who have arrived at their why after they have traveled down the road themselves, and they have found a way to navigate the road that they think is easier, or that maybe they navigated the road and in the midst of navigating it, they realized, oh, I can actually share this information with other people.
Yeah.
And it's cool to hear that you're kind of a combination of all of that, right? You navigated the road, you figured out the hardships yourself, you may have found a couple of paths that were easier. And at first, maybe it wasn't that you wanted to be a harbinger of hope as much as it was to go in there and rattle the cages and go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
All of this stuff can be done a little bit easier. And then as you begin to navigate that and help people, that hope component just shines through.
Yeah.
I want to
I always say that I like to disrupt and transform systems.
I love that. That's great. I'm a systems person. Well, I'm a systems person now. In my youth, I was not. The rebellious me hated systems and structures. This is very surprising for people I know now to hear, because yes, I am so regimented and so systemized now, because I realize how freeing it is to have systems and structure, where the old rebellious me thought it was being in a prison or a cage, and I couldn't get my mind wrapped around the fact that it is freeing. I want to touch on something very quickly that you said, because it's a life theme for me, and it may be a book that I'm working on. I have an outline of things, and I'm just getting the thoughts on paper. But that whole 2 to 5 year period coming out of recovery before they can be a coach, there's this sentence in Marcus Aurelius's book, Meditation, that says that it references to a self-anchor. And that philosophy really resonates with me, of having an anchor, and you are on the boat that is being held by that anchor, and that anchor allows you to swing in a circumference around where the anchor rests, and that with seasons of life, you may raise up anchor and drop it somewhere else. But there is and the reason that I thought about a book is because one sentence came to me, and this sentence I think will be a chapter, and it was the person without an anchor, the person with no anchor. And you talking about the coach coming out of that 2 to 5 year period, if they latch on to someone else's boat
Oh, yes.
without a good anchor,
Yeah.
now you're along for their journey.
Oh, yes.
Without anything holding you firmly in your place, the anchor, without having that anchor. And it's such a great, number one, it's wise to have that knowledge in place to know their boat's finally floating, right?
Yeah.
Where they were sinking for so many years, they finally have a boat that's floating, and they just want to help everybody else who's sinking rise up. Yeah, but if they don't have an anchor in place to keep them rooted firmly in their values and in their rigidity and in their soberness, that tacking on to other people's boats can cause damage, can pull them away from, and maybe start, instead of them rising other people up, they can start pulling them down and sinking them.
And I've seen that with coaches. I've seen it happen in their lives where they didn't have good boundaries, got transference where you're kind of, oh, this person reminds me of somebody I really cared about, and I'm going to be there for them. I'm going to answer my phone at 4 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock in the morning. And I'm not going to take any time for me, and all the stuff that I did for my recovery goes out the window because I'm constantly involved with helping you. I've seen that go real bad with people, and I've seen them go back to use again or take advantage of a client. And that's in our field, that's a breach of ethics. And, you can lose your license for it. So, you have to have really good inner navigation tools as well.
Yeah, I think that number one, I think that it's amazing that not only are you bringing people hope, but you're also living it, right? You're able to say to them, I was there, my boat was sunk, and here I am now, floating. And not only am I floating, but I've got all these other boats that are latched onto me, and I'm helping them, and they're helping other people. And it's become this tribe, as you said, of people who are all working together for the same cause, trying to help other people who face the similar challenges, creating that fork in the road.
Yes.
Again. Now, before we wrap up, any final thoughts, anything we didn't hit on?
Not really, not that I can think of.
I think just from our brief conversations and talking with Caroline before we spoke, Caroline really hit on the fact that she knew your why would be powerful. And I can say just in our interactions that you are a testimony to being a sharer of hope, a harbinger of hope, a purveyor of hope. I have all kinds of words for that. That's it, a hope dealer. Good job. I like that one best. Thanks so much for taking the time. Thanks for all the people that I know you've helped, both ones that I know and ones that I don't. And thanks for taking the time to be here today. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. And just realize that helping people is a privilege I get to experience. It's not something that other people need to be grateful for. It's just something that we do.